how many times in relationships their system for maintaining intimacy was date night.
Okay, yeah.
It's a nice thing to do every once in a while,
Mhm.
but date night is not where you save all of your intimacy for this one moment in time. Because usually the food's overpriced, really loud out there. It's underwhelming. You're not really connecting with the person as deeply as you can. The most successful couples made sure that their partner knew that they were thinking about them throughout the day.
There's a difference between wanting love and actually being able to receive it.
This is the Honeymoon Frequency podcast, a space for living conversations about presence, union, and the art of relating without urgency. We're Tyler and Brandy, partners in love, life, and business.
And what you'll hear here are the conversations we're already having slow, honest dialogues about intimacy, nervous system safety, devotion, repair, and pacing.
This isn't a podcast about fixing love or mastering relationships. It's an invitation to slow down, to listen, and notice what becomes possible when connection isn't rushed but met exactly where you are.
Nothing here needs to be solved. Nothing needs to be forced. Just stay with the conversation and let it meet you at your own pace. Yeah, some really good insights during our conversation. The You really brought to light how important eye gazing is, not just to deepen like physical intimacy
Mm.
or this like woo woo spiritual connection,
Yeah.
right? It's a very practical tool, a practical ritual to do to be able to hold space and be present with your partner um, while they're emotionally processing.
Mm.
Like that's, um, I think, a skill set that every couple really ought to uh, cultivate.
Well, yeah, because I even think about your tea ceremonies. So there's times when at the end where you say like, what came through for anyone? Did anyone want to share or
Mhm.
reflect? Or anytime I've been in a breath work and someone has this big realization or insight about how their life or their patterns have come into be who they are right now.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people don't really want anyone to say anything after. It's really just, I'm going to share this and I just want the space just to let it sit because now if you say something, now it might interrupt that process.
Yeah, and that's like a clean container will not allow any
Exactly.
talking because for that exact reason, like the files need to file.
Mhm. And so I think about the time that we had our meditation and you saw me get stuck.
Hmm.
I didn't have it within me and I didn't know if that was the right time to say, you know what, I actually don't want any processing or talking through this more. I think at this point, it just needs to get felt. And knowing even in that time, can I just allow myself to not try to explain, not to intellectualize, not try to make myself look different than I am right now? Like, oh my God, she doesn't know I'm perfect now, or she knows I'm not perfect now. God forbid.
Something that's coming through now is um, I noticed how quickly. So we had our emotionally intense conversation on Sunday. We took time to process individually, came back together, had a conversation. And I still felt like at night there was still some distance between us,
Mhm.
some emotional distance. Um, and it felt like by the morning, we, because we took our time to feel, to process, and to have a conversation, it just felt like all of that was part of repair. There wasn't really a rupture. I mean, there was a surprise
Mhm.
and like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Um, but it just seemed to like go like we have our it seemed to just go through its own cycle, its own process. Like I don't feel any emotional distance because of our conversation, but also because of the way that we communicate through it. and respect, allow space, process, and look at each other.
So there's a famous saying that I've heard is don't go to bed with a heavy heart.
Mm. Mm.
So it seems to be that that's not entirely true. What's your thought on that?
I don't think it's true. I I heard it too decades ago, like, "Don't go to bed mad. Don't go to bed in an argument with your spouse." Absolutely go to bed. Do you know why you go to bed? Because you wake up and your brain waves are now you've had time to process, you've gone through different brain waves, you're no longer probably in the stress response.
Mhm, okay.
Yeah, you've shifted, and so go to bed mad. Not only that, if you continue talking and you're flooded, nothing good comes.
Oh, you've told me this one. You can't fix a problem with the same consciousness that got you there.
Yeah, and that's not my quote, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's Albert Einstein's quote.
Mm.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't fix something with the same thinking that got you there. Mhm.
So when I was in PT school, again, I love relating this because
Huh.
it just makes so much sense, the as within, so without. And when you think of the physical body, this is also the same as the spiritual, emotional body. So our professor, I didn't understand it at the time, but he taught us, he said, if you have no idea what's going on and someone's coming to you with all this different pain, when in doubt, give the joint space.
Mm,
Because a lot of times, if you give the joint space, then you allow the actual problem or new sensation or whatever it is that they need, the new insight to get them further along their journey. So, in any relationship, I've always learned allow space to happen. And so, even in martial arts like jujitsu, you're trying to create space always. So, when someone's on top of you, you're trying to create enough space so that way I can now get myself out of an unfavorable situation, or if I want to control the situation, I'll take up space. But that's a different thing.
mm,
So it's always about, for me, space. So understanding there's actually a good time to utilize space to allow for those processing and the different filing to happen.
mm. It's good. Yeah. I thank you for being that way.
You are so welcome.
Mhm,
There was another part that you talked about the importance of knowing how to make these big spiritual lessons practical.
oh, yeah.
And that is one of the most important lessons that I learned, and it's similar to the before enlightenment chop wood, carry water, after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It's just so important that you get all these big spiritual lessons, and a lot of times it's hard to actually ground them,
Yeah.
or it's not really emphasized enough that just because you have this big spiritual gift now, it doesn't mean that you live life any different in a day to day. It's just you view it from a higher consciousness.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you're not, like, bigger than anybody else.
Mm,
You've had this remarkable insight that you are more than just this bag of bones, this body.
this meat suit that people
Well,
say.
please, that that term really grosses me out, but, um, yeah, you realize that you're this remarkable being that's connected to all that is, all that ever was, all that will ever be, and you're this point of focus that has laundry.
That has laundry to do. And then so it reminds me of us starting our business when we were talking about the honeymoon frequency.
Mm,
So I want to go into that, but I also want to talk about why I believed relationships started to fizzle out.
mm,
And it's not understanding what you talked about. The biggest part of a relationship is that presence,
mm,
and knowing that when you're doing the laundry, that if you're present with the person, you're realizing that you're doing the stuff with someone that you wanted to already. It's not always fireworks,
mm,
but there's sometimes the steadiness of life. How can you keep the presence there?
mm.
And just gratitude for the ability that you get to share a life with someone.
Ooh, gratitude that you get to share your life with someone. Hopefully, you enjoy that someone.
You really, though, because I've learned this in myself. Number one, when I was homeless, I didn't have laundry that I could go to consistently. I didn't have food that I can count on consistently. I didn't have a place that I could shower. And you start to notice when you don't have those things, you are very grateful for every time that you do get the chance to say, I didn't have this before, but now I get to enjoy this now. And similarly, when you go along the path of spirituality, is you go through the different people in your life and the different characters in your phase of life, then you have the space of being by yourself. And one thing you'll have is you'll long for another person. I believe that everyone will long for another person because that's just what we're meant to do here.
Yeah.
And when you're in your relationship in the most mundane activities, can you maintain gratitude and presence for your living in the manifestation that you always wanted?
Well, it's a practice, that's for sure, like anything, right? It's a practice of awareness. Yeah.
I want to go into the honeymoon phase versus the honeymoon frequency.
Okay.
So you came up with the title honeymoon frequency, and I want to talk about it because everyone knows the honeymoon phase, but people think that it's just a phase, number one,
Mhm.
and that it's inevitable that it ends.
Mhm.
Why? What's your take on that? Give me your insights on our relationship thus far and the insights you've had in your own spiritual journey that can, I don't know, answer this question.
The first thing that comes to mind is, honeymoon. What do we all think of when we think of that word? We think of togetherness, laughter, joy. We're having a good time. We're relaxed. We're probably on vacation, right? So there's like this carefree openness, open heartedness, passion. All of those are emotions and feelings, which equate to, which create frequency. And when people are on honeymoon, hopefully, I mean, when we say and think of someone in the honeymoon phase or on honeymoon, the first thing that comes to mind is a couple who's in resonance,
Oh, in resonance.
right?
Mhm.
They're enjoying each
Talk
other.
that talk.
They're enjoying they're enjoying time together. They're looking at each other. They're probably having an extraordinarily amount of sex. Um, so they're engaged with life and experiencing life together. So that's what I think of when I think of the honeymoon. And pop culture, society, we've labeled it a phase in relationships because that resonance tends to fade. And it tends to fade because we don't have good relationship habits,
Ooh, what are some
rela-
of those?
relationship rituals.
Okay, talk to me about rituals. What are these habits and rituals?
Well, one is the eye gazing that we were talking about. That isn't isn't this ritual for a woo woo spiritual connection to yeah, some people do want to cultivate that depth of spiritual connection through eye gazing. But what you reminded me of and really brought to light was how that act, that habit, that ritual that we have implemented from the very beginning of our relationship through all of these all of this time together and at the most important times is when we're having an emotionally charged conversation and we are able to look at each other in the eyes without saying anything, and how important that that process is, because it's one, it's seeing the person who you're in a heated conversation with, or a more deep, challenging, emotionally challenging conversation, gives you time to really see them, to feel them, and to give them space to process and not rush, but to really give them time to slow down and feel what they're feeling. You get to feel what you're feeling. And then that slowness, that tenderness, that softness comes back through the mouth. The words that come out are cultivated from that that space. What I've experienced with you is a deeper relationship and more tenderness, deeper intimacy. And so that we have been in the honeymoon frequency all along. it hasn't been a phase because we've cultivated these patterns and these rituals um, outside of the heated conversations.
Yeah. So you're right. When it comes to pop cultures, we assume that it's exactly what you said. Those emotions, those feelings. If I had to identify what a honeymoon phase or a honeymoon, the word would look like, it would be that togetherness. It would be the enjoyment of sharing time with another person. And what I found to be very common is people don't think that's realistic to maintain all the time.
Mm.
And there are times definitely that you fall out of it, or not fall out of it, but it's not as light and airy
It's
as,
kind of you drift away
yeah,
almost.
that's
Mm.
life, that you will drift away. But the problem I find is people don't think you can get it back once you've drifted away, or they don't realize how much, that neglect of being present, how much that is the actual emotional drift.
Oh,
I
the,
hit something with that
the
one.
neglect of being present. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we hung out. We spent 6 hours binge watching Netflix together. What? That we were together, but you weren't. Neither one of you were present. Do you have something to talk about? Something in common now to talk about because you have a show to talk about? Yeah. Is that really the depth that you want? I mean, it's okay if you do.
It is, and there are some times that we've listened to a YouTube video together.
Hmm.
And again, it's all about, are you intentional with what you're watching and what you're consuming?
Yeah.
Because right afterwards, we might have, I mean, we pause the video every like 30 seconds to say a 30-minute conversation. So we don't really make it far through any type of video.
Yeah.
But I do like the ability to sit and talk and say, hey, what did you learn about that? Or what came up for you in that? But I did find how often, especially for me, when I was in the honeymoon phase in other relationships, number one, we weren't cultivating deeper intimacy. We were just sharing experiences. And so watching Netflix, watching a movie, I don't know, going to go to the park, like, were we actually talking about the more vulnerable parts of ourselves? Were we looking at each other? Were we discussing the places we wanted to go in terms of where we wanted to be on our journey? What might be some habits that are getting in the way and what we're working through? And that I found to be much more important because that gives you little drops of intimacy and vulnerability throughout the way. Where I believe the phase would end for me usually is life would present us with something, it was really like a crossroads to say, how do you guys move through a difficult conversation? And because I was not really with a person usually that shared the values, that was at the same resonance as I was, not that they were higher or lower, but just wasn't at the same resonance, is that first situation would come up and that would be the immediate rupture. And now moving forward, there was no moving forward. And we just continue to drift until it was very apparent this is not going to work out.
Well, you bring up a really good point about resonance. And so social resonance and character resonance are two different things.
Oh, talk to me more about that. What's social resonance?
We can be resonant about our social topics, like what we're experiencing, sort of that surface,
Okay.
right? Character resonance is where we talk about what we value and how we hold those values in our lives, how we maintain integrity with our values. So that's where we get into the more deeper resonance with people. And so if we can bring that to surface earlier on throughout the honeymoon phase,
Yeah.
or throughout
Courting phase.
the
Okay.
courting phase, um, that is the key to keeping the honeymoon frequency alive.
I agree with you. And I'm going to add on to that. Like you said, the rituals. So having a system, I've noticed how much is the most important thing in life.
Mm,
Because what a system does is it gives you a framework for how do I handle this when this comes up or
mhm,
something similar of this topic, this magnitude. How do I handle it or how do I process it
mhm.
moving forward? And I saw how important it was for us when we started developing systems to say, how do we maintain intimacy throughout the day?
Yeah.
And we talked about it, and that's going to shout out our starter rituals pack.
Mhm.
But how many times in relationships prior or people that I know, their system for maintaining intimacy was date night.
Okay, yeah.
And even still, we've noticed as much intimacy as we've cultivated, date night does not add to that. It's a nice thing to do every once in a while,
Mhm.
but date night is not where you save all of your intimacy for this one moment in time. Because usually the food's overpriced, really loud out there. It's
Mhm.
really not, it's underwhelming. You're not really connecting with the person as deeply as you can.
Yeah, and you're having a shared experience, which is still very important, right? To
Mm.
have those shared experiences. And where the rubber really meets the road is the day to day. Like, I want to feel connected to you every single day, not once a week, not just when you get home at night, if you were out working all day, but throughout the day.
And how we do that and how we found that doing that is just the micro gestures.
Yeah.
So doing it in the morning, doing it in the middle of the day, doing it at nighttime, just coming back to those micro gestures that however people do that, whether it's a touch, whether it's, saying something to someone, whether it's your favorite is the 20-second hug in the morning. And I did find the most successful couples made sure that their partner knew that they were thinking about them throughout the day.
Yeah. They knew that they were choosing each other.
And I'm going to shout out Evan for this one, but it was such a really cool insight in the way listening to him reflect on their relationship and saying, even in the morning, just welcoming that person in a warm embrace and to say, like, welcome,
Mhm.
how was your sleep? And just really saying, now I'm choosing you today and I'm going to make it the first thing. So, again, back when you're in that theta brainwave state, I'm letting you know that I'm choosing you today.
Oh, yeah, that was really beautiful. And it keeps you in emotional resonance. And you know what that does?
Tell me, what does that do?
The longer you're in, or more often you're in emotional resonance with your partner, the more often you're going to have sex.
And why would you not want to do more of that in
I mean,
general?
right? Right? It's good for our health. It's good for our hormones. It's good for our overall well being and happiness. It's not just a pleasure principle.
It's not, and I don't remember her name, I think it's Sasha on
Mm.
Instagram, but she was saying, "I don't wanna have foreplay before sex, I want my whole life to be foreplay."
Like, when I saw her say that, I was like, yes, 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 yes. Maybe we should call it the honeymoon frequency foreplay pack.
Oh, so staying in the emotional resonance, yes, is something, but I found it so cool even staying in the emotional resonance when times are good and then when times are tougher, which is what makes those more difficult or emotionally charged situations not as distant in terms of emotions.
Yeah.
So when you walk past someone after, you might have said something that surprised them, just giving them a little touch. It
Yes.
doesn't even need to be said. Anything needs to be said, but I can just give you a little touch to say, "Hey, I'm here. I see you there too."
Yeah. And even a touch, a smile from the eyes. Yeah. Something that speaks, I love you.
And that's what the relationship should always be about, I believe, is letting someone know I'm choosing you and I love you.
Mm.
Constantly saying that and not letting life get too much in the way,
Yeah.
which there was something that Evan also said during that is it's more important to have relationship revolve around, or was it your life revolve around the relationship, not your relationship revolve around life? Because what that's essentially saying is this life is more important or higher priority than our relationship.
Mm.
So how do I say our relationship is of higher priority and then we will create a life around that to maintain the integrity?
Yeah. Well, it's very practical because you're in relationship. All of life is built on your relationship with people, work, your body. You're always in relationships. So it's which relationships are you putting first? If you're putting,
Oh.
if you want to be in a long term happy relationship, that one goes right on up there with your physical, mental, emotional well being.
And I've heard this also said by multiple people, and this is how I view life, is if I want to be in partnership with someone, and this is not romantic, but let's say it's a business partnership. Let's say it's a friendship. I want to look at how are they treating the closest person or the most important person in their
Mm,
life? How is that relationship? Because if they honor and value that, they're at a stable foundation,
mm,
I believe.
mm,
But if they don't honor and value that, I don't have confidence that you're going to honor and value my relationship. And I'm not as physically, emotionally intimate with you
mm.
in a friendship or in a business partnership.
Right. Well, in a business partnership, you might be giving $1 million to this person, right?
Exactly.
You're sharing $1 million to cultivate something. And I think that's a really great measuring stick is how do they treat the person they sleep next to at night?
And I'm going to say one thing to close this. There was that, was it study in Japan, or there was some guy that talked about this in Japan. He said, a man's wealth is actually associated with the woman's happiness.
Yeah, yes. Oh, I
So,
wish I knew that one completely.
but I will tell you this in general. I thought it was a joke, or I thought it was something that older men in relationships said just to be like, you know what, I keep it hands off. But happy wife, happy life.
Oh,
And I thought it was just agree with your wife all the time, but it's not really the case. And I will say, when we had our, going through this astrological change, I noticed how much that was bringing up emotions in you that didn't quite have everything to do with me.
yeah.
And I noticed just the difference in my energy moving forward based on your energy. So I
Yeah.
will say, make sure you have a great foundation for your relationship that allows for emotional freedom and emotional, say, excitement about living life in not just the big gestures of life, but in the mundane day to day.
Mm. Well, when you say emotional freedom, what do you mean?
Emotional freedom to feel all of the emotions and
Okay.
not try to say, well, I only want to feel the happy ones, but allowing you the space to say, if I need to feel down a little bit, I'm going to feel down, but I know how to get myself up. And if I can't, then I'm going to ask or tell you what I need in order to help me get out of this feeling or this emotional rut if I'm in one.
Yeah.
So allowing that to be the case, allowing, again, coming back to that discomfort of, it might be some uncomfortable days because someone's not feeling the greatest,
Hmm.
and not trying to rush their process.
Yeah.
So the freedom to feel the lows and the freedom to feel the highs,
Yeah.
and not thinking of it again as, when is the other shoe going to drop?
Oh,
Because
right.
that's another one of, sometimes we limit ourselves of feeling good
Hmm.
because we're afraid of, how long is this going to last?
Oh, you bring it. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. Like if I feel so good, something's going to break.
Yeah. This can't be good. So yes, that's where I say the emotional freedom to be able to feel the highs of life and feel kind of the lower points, the peaks and valleys.
Yeah. And to not take the peaks or valleys personal.
Hmm.
Like if for the other, for me, I was really in a valley um, because I was shedding. Yeah. The last days of the year of the snake, shedding,
Only fitting that you were shedding all of these things.
shedding all of these things. And yeah, astrologically speaking, having an eclipse on your moon.
I've learned it's pretty intense.
It's pretty intense. Yeah. Yay.
So all
Oh,
done with that.
yes.
So can you, for anyone listening, give just one healthy relationship habit that you think would make a massive difference in the mundane and creating more emotional resonance?
Yes. My favorite is the 20-second hug, and it's a minimum. It's not a sloppy hug. It's not a half-ass hug. It is a belly to belly, chest to chest, arms fully around each other, head nuzzled in, 20-second hug where you synchronize the breath if you can within that 20 seconds, but you slow down your breath and you just feel I love you. Doesn't have to be said, but that's always nice to hear.
Mm.
But just radiate the love and you will feel a visceral shift at 20 seconds because oxytocin, you know, now we'll get into all of that stuff, but it's a great oxytocin release, which will immediately help you to feel loved and loving.
Mm.
So that's my favorite one.
And I love that one because, again, it's not about making more time in your relationship. It's about how do you take the time that you already have and make it better, which is all the things that we're trying to do now with being more present and just seeing how we can give love and receive love from our partner. So, again, as always, thank you. And I love you for sharing that and for sharing the space with me.
We'll leave it here for now. There's nothing you need to take from this conversation, nothing you need to figure out. Just notice what's still with you, what softened, what slowed, what felt familiar.
This conversation met you in some way. You're welcome to share it with someone you care about, or to leave a rating or review so this space can reach others who might need it too.
If you'd like to stay with this work a little longer, we've shared some gentle offerings in the show notes. Meditations, reflections, and resources, all as invitations.
Remember, move at your own pace. Trust your timing. Thanks for being here with us and for listening into this space. Until next time.